Denison Board of Trustees, President Weinberg, faculty, thank you for this honor beyond words of receiving this honorary doctorate from my beloved alma mater. And I thank my fellow alum, my colleague and indeed friend and brother, Dean here at the Washington National Cathedral, Randy Hollerith, for taking the time to bestow this honor upon me. In fact, Randy's brother and I were friends while both students at Denison, and so Randy and I go back a long way, as do my connections to Denison. For Denison has been a part of my life since my sisters, my eldest, Karen, who is also a Denison alum, my brother and I would explore this campus as little children each time we would come to visit my grandparents, who lived at 210 Sunrise here in the village. Never did I dream as a child that I would attend this university, and it would be beyond my grandparents' wildest imaginations that I would be standing here today receiving this honor. As a student here at Denison, I made lifelong friends during my years as a psychology major, and I can truthfully say that Denison changed the course of my life, as I have written about many times. When David Woodyard, then Dean of the Chapel, introduced me to James Cone's book, Black Theology of Liberation. To be sure, I certainly would not be standing here as a theologian, but for my beloved Dean Woodyard, introducing me to that book at a pivotal time in my life. And so, President Weinberg and Denison family, I thank you for this honor, and most of all, I thank you for the journey that was Denison, a journey that sent me on my way. But most importantly, on this day, I want to congratulate and thank the graduates for allowing me the utter privilege of sharing this time with you, especially when I know that many of you are asking, who is she? And no worries, if I were sitting in your seats today, I would probably be asking that too. So thank you. Thank you for indulging me this time on this, your special day. Thank you for allowing me to share with you just a few words that hopefully will hold some meaning for you as you leave this part of your journey and begin another part. Now, of course, after the year we have had, I don't have to tell any of you that these times of ours are complicated, challenging, if not confusing for our world, let alone for our nation. For we live in a time in which a global health pandemic, COVID-19, has laid bare for some who did not know before the life-negating realities of another long-ignored pandemic, that of racial injustice and inequity. And so it is that our country faces a time of reckoning, if you will, for we must decide what kind of nation we want to be. Do we want to be a nation in which there is truly freedom and justice for all, where each person is treated as sacred and therefore can rightly pursue life, liberty, and happiness? Or do we want to be a nation that carries forth an historical legacy where some are granted undue privileges because of who they are, while others are subjugated to unjust penalties because of who they are not? Our country is without a doubt at a crossroads as we decide whether we as a nation, we as a people will live into the dream of our better angels or foster the nightmare of our worst demons. As for me, and I trust for each of you as well, I am banking on the dream, which means I am banking on a commitment from each one of us to lead this nation toward its better angels. And so, what does that mean? What does that look like? What kind of commitment is required of us? Oh, I have no doubt that during your time here at Denison, graduates, through the conversations, experiences, and encounters you had in and out of the classroom, and through the tools of analysis that have been nurtured, that your knowledge and experiences have been broadened, providing you with the tools of not imagination to envision and work toward a more just future for our nation and for our world, for your children. And as important as the education that you received here at Denison is toward making the dream of a more just world and society is, there is something even more fundamental than that. For if indeed we are really committed to becoming the best of who we can be as a nation, as a people, then that commitment is not defined by the big thoughts, the big analysis, or even the big words that we have learned here at Denison. Rather, it is defined by a commitment to the little words that seem to have become lost to us as a nation, indeed as a people. These are little words, Denison family, that I believe absolutely can change our world. And so, what are these words? First, they are little words of respect. Little words that respect a person's humanity. Little words like calling them by their chosen name and not non-accidentally, misnaming them. Little words like calling them by their rightful title, not ignoring it, or addressing them by their proper pronoun, he, she, him, her, they, them, and not belittling it. Little words of respect are words that recognize people as essential human beings, not just essential workers. Little words of respect go a big way in affirming the sacred humanity of all who have breath or have ever had breath. For here is the thing: one's race, one's gendered identity, one's sexual expression, one's class, creed, religion, culture, language spoken, country of origin, or any other discriminating human attribute does not determine whether or not a person deserves respect. No, the determining factor for whether or not someone deserves respect is the very sacred breath they breathe. And that, Denison family, means every single human being that walks the face of this earth, no matter where they live, what they look like, the language they speak, or the labor they do, every single human being is sacred. That they breathe makes them so. A people who no longer speak little words of respect to one another is a people for whom incivility, callousness, mean-spiritedness, and sheer inhumanity becomes standard practice, as standard as taking somebody's breath away. Zay Jones, a wide receiver for the Los Angeles Raiders, said that one day while he was in a store shopping with his cousin, an elderly white woman approached him and said, "I'm from Minneapolis, and I just want you to know that your life matters." Little words of respect. They are words that can change the dignity of this world, of our nation, of a people. Then there are little words of gratitude. Words like, thank you, or I appreciate that, or I'm grateful for that. Have you ever noticed, Denison, how in our world today we move through it without stopping to say thank you, be it thank you to one another or just out loud to ourselves for seeing another day? We have become a taken for granted people, a taken for granted society. If this past year has taught us nothing else, it has revealed how we have taken for granted our earth and its resources therein, even as we have taken for granted our relationships one to another. We have acted entitled to resources, entitled to health, entitled to freedom, and entitled to relationships for that matter, entitled, not grateful for them. And be clear, that which we take for granted, we tend not to care for. We tend not to look after. Instead, we are inclined to squander, abuse, and discard it. An ungrateful society, an unthankful people, is a wasteful society and people, where natural resources are plundered, where the earth is abused and lives are wasted. Little words of gratitude go a long way to creating a world, a society, a people who value the richness of the world around them, the preciousness of creation itself, and the sheer graciousness of human relationships. At 7 p.m. each night over the past year, New Yorkers opened a window or stepped out onto their balconies or rooftops and made some noise for 2 minutes to give thanks and gratitude to all the frontline workers who were risking their lives every day for them. Little words of gratitude. Thank you. Those are words that can change the character of the world, of a nation, of a people. And then there are little words of responsibility. Oh, how we have forgotten to speak these words. Little words like, I was wrong, I made a mistake, it's on me, my bad. How easy it has become in these times that are ours to seize upon the mistakes, the missteps, and misjudgments of others while not taking responsibility for our own mistakes, our own missteps, our own misjudgments. Here's the thing. No matter our presumed status, no matter how important or great we think we are, no matter how educated, we all mess up. Each and every one of us, at some time or another, falls short of the mark. We all make misjudgments. We all make mistakes. And here is the thing. The way to a more moral society is not a way where people turn away from their mistakes. No, the way to a more moral society is where imperfect people are willing to speak words of responsibility, like, I was wrong. It is only when we can look to ourselves, admit and take responsibility for our faults, our flaws, our missteps, our mistakes, that we are then open to learning and to becoming a better person, to becoming better people, to becoming a better nation. To say I was wrong is the first step toward righting the wrong. You can't make right that which you never admit was wrong in the first place. The buck stops here, President Harry Truman said. Little words of responsibility. My bad. These are words that can go a big way toward changing the soul of a nation, of a people, of a world. And then there are little words of humility, like help. Our world, our society values self-reliance. It is better to be independent than dependent, we are taught, and perhaps it is. But this I do know, that which makes us humane, that is compassionate, with the will to help others, that begins with our capacity to ask for help for ourselves. To lose that capacity is to lose our very humanity. When we are not able to ask for the help we need for whatever reason, we can too easily resent others who ask for the help they need. We cultivate our own compassion in as much as we are able to ask others to be compassionate toward us. That is, in as much as we are able to speak little words of humility, like help, I need you, give me a hand, can't do it on my own, didn't get here by my own bootstraps. Words of humility are not a sign of our human weakness. Rather, they are the very strength of our humanity. Bottom line, a society, a people who are unable to speak little words of humility is a society or a people who lack compassion and who lack the ability then to give help to those most in need of help. Help! Freddie Gray cried out on a Baltimore street, and no one stopped to help. And so it is that little words of humility, help, they are words that can change the heart of a world, of a nation, of a people. And finally, there are those little words of awe, like, oh my, or wow. There is not a day that should go by that we are not awed by the very presence and movement of goodness in our world. To be awed by the presence of goodness in this world is not to ignore the suffering, the despair, the injustice, indeed the shadow of evil that lurks in our world. Rather, to be awed is to recognize that even in the midst of all that is bad, unjust, and evil that is in our world, even in the midst of the underside, in the midst of the worst of who we are, that indeed the worst of who we are is not the whole of who we are. There is, I like to say, that force of goodness that breaks in every once in a while, that force of goodness pulling us toward our better angels, reminding us of our very created goodness, our very potential to be better. I was awed by the goodness in the story of Sean Marcus Drumgold, a young black man who said that after the murder of Auburn Aubrey while he was jogging in his neighborhood, Sean said, I was afraid to walk by myself in my childhood neighborhood because, he said, I was afraid I wouldn't live to see another day. He went on to say that when I shared the fear with my neighbors, they said, we will walk with you. And they walked. Wow, I said when hearing that story. To forget the wow is to risk falling into a pothole of futility and despair, and thus to miss the inspiration to keep going, to push forward, to get better. To be awed by the moments of goodness breaking into our world is indeed to be reminded not to give up on our world, upon ourselves, and indeed upon one another. Little words of awe. Wow. They're words that carry the hope of a better world, a better nation, a better people. And so, Denison family, and especially you graduates, as you leave this place, know this: you can change the world. For such change does not begin with the big thoughts, the big ideals, or the big words. Rather, it begins with the little words of respect, he, she, them. Little words of gratitude, thank you. Little words of responsibility, my bad. Little words of humility, help. And little words of awe, wow. Let the little words we speak reflect the nation and the people we want to be. Thank you, Denison family.